The idea of genetic diseases is that genes control the synthesis of the proteins. But there's a lot of problems with that theory. The first of which is there's some people say 100,000, some people say over 200,000 proteins in a human being and something like 20,000 genes. So how is it that 20,000 genes code for 100,000 proteins? There's 80,000 unaccounted for. The second problems include such things as how does the RNA, mRNA get out of the nucleus? There's no exit strategy. And another one is there are no ribosomes. So where is the RNA translated into proteins? And there's a lot more problems with the whole genetic theory. As Stefan points out, that even geneticists at a conference that apparently they had at Berkeley in 2000 and something 8 couldn't define a gene, because it turns out that a gene and the entire DNA is like every chemical in a constant state of flux, and there are no fixed genes like we think there are. And so what's really happening here is the genes, the DNA is functioning as an antenna, like I've said. And somehow the input into the system in a situation where you have a prominent gene that's being produced, the input to create that particular sequence seems to be something like fixed and too rigidified into the system. It's sort of like the way I picture it, it's like a fixed belief, or even you could say a emotion that's stuck in fear. Or you could say, instead of all the wavelengths that come from the earth or the sun, you're only exposed to a single frequency, a single wavelength. That's essentially the problem with EMFs. And so therefore it keeps calling forth a certain sequence of base pairs, which then looks like it's creating a certain gene like MTHFR, which then looks like it's creating a certain protein, which then is associated with bad outcomes. And so the whole problem is laid on that gene as if you're a mutant, when in fact there is no fixed mutations. Everything in the genome, a woman named Barbara McClintock actually proved this back in the 90s. The entire genome is in a constant state of flux. And it's only that there's certain influences that have got you stuck in a certain mode that you keep overproducing a certain, quote, gene or sequence, and then overproducing possibly a certain protein. And then you have symptoms like disease. So it's entirely, the whole situation is, it's not the gene's fault. You're not a mutant. You don't have a genetic disease. There are no genetic disease. You have an energetic disease which is seemingly stuck in a certain pattern. And the solution is to unstick the pattern. Now, I can't give a prescription as to how to unstick the pattern, because it depends on what the pattern is that's stuck and what happened to that particular person. But that's why we had this conference. Those are the influences, sound and light and water. And if you work with those, I have a strong suspicion that even things we call so-called genetic diseases are much more flexible and malleable and treatable and maybe even curable than we think. And another reason why I think that is because there's never a so-called genetic disease that has an identical outcome in every person. Even the hallmark of genetic diseases, like cystic fibrosis, one person lives 20 years, another lives 40 years. Why is that? Obviously, the way they lived. And I'm not even willing to call that epigenetics. There's nothing else than the energetic inputs downloaded by the antenna that are called DNA, downloaded into the water, which creates the structures which we call a human being. If you just think about that system, and there's no way I would do any sort of genetic testing or find out if I had MTHFR. It's a bit like because I think also that fixes it into your mind that you have a genetic disease. And it's like I have very vivid memories early on in my career meeting Christian Scientist patients. And, they come in and maybe they fell and hurt their leg. And I'd say we should do an x-ray. And they would say, no, they don't want to do an x-ray because if they see it, if they see the fracture, it becomes much more difficult for their mind to heal. And so they would rather not see it, and they were much more successful. And I think that's what happens when you do these MTHFR type tests. You fix it in your mind that that's the problem. It's not the problem. It's a consequence of materialistic thinking.